I want to talk to you about something that used to be a very prominent practice right here in the United States: eugenics. Eugenics is a movement of people that think human populations can be improved through selective breeding and forced sterilization. Proponents of the practice actually believe that their social status is due to their superior genetic makeup. Shockingly, eugenics played a significant role in the cultural development of many institutions in the U.S., and it was a widely accepted cultural norm. In fact, a 1937 Fortune magazine poll found that only 15% of Americans opposed the practice. Actually, the U.S. pioneered the sterilization movement against defective genetic traits, which then paved the way for Hitler's widespread genocidal practice of eugenics against minorities in Germany. Even though the Nazi Party considered the U.S. an ally in the eugenics movement, World War II greatly changed the American perception of the inhumane practice. But before it was finally condemned in the U.S., it affected an estimated 65,000 Native American, African American, and disabled women who had all been forcibly sterilized. Soon after, the anti-eugenics sentiment spread worldwide and was considered a violation of human rights in almost every international body, which now say that perpetrators of this practice should be punished and the victims compensated. In fact, according to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, one of the factors listed as an act of genocide is the intent to destroy a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as, quote, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Fast forward to today. What would you say if I told you that eugenics is still in full effect? And even worse, that it's being administered by a first world democracy. Yep, believe it or not, the Israeli government has been forcibly administering birth control to a segment of its population. For the first time, an Israeli government official has publicly acknowledged their practice of injecting Ethiopian Jewish women against their will with contraceptives. Israel is a country that has experienced a significant influx of Ethiopian immigrants during the last 2 decades. Now, some 130,000 Ethiopians, most of whom are Jewish, live in the country. However, the Ethiopian minority population is heavily marginalized and segregated. Not to mention they experience exponentially higher poverty and unemployment rates than that of native Israelis. In fact, there have been multiple instances of racist mobs who have vandalized and harassed Ethiopian neighborhoods. And even these nationalists are even supported by some members of the Israeli Knesset. At one nationalist rally, a Knesset minister, Miri Regev, described illegal immigrants as a, quote, cancer to the country. But these instances of racism have long plagued Israel. Back in 1996, thousands of Ethiopian Jews clashed with riot police over the news that blood they donated was secretly dumped out because of fear that it was contaminated with AIDS. But perhaps more disturbing than all of this is that the Ethiopian Jewish population has been struggling with a staggering 50% decline in their birth rate over the last decade. And this week, we've finally been able to confirm why. According to Israel news source Haaretz, the government has been injecting Ethiopian Jewish immigrants with Depo-Provera, a hormonal contraceptive, and they've been doing it without their consent or knowledge. One investigative journalist who interviewed 35 Ethiopian immigrants found that they were intimidated and threatened into taking the shots, which they were told were merely inoculations. Not only is this completely inhumane and despicable, it's also a complete violation of human rights and female sovereignty and making their own reproductive choices. But even though they have now admitted to the practice, they have denied wrongdoing. In light of this scandal, Israel's health minister now claims that gynecologists have been ordered, quote, not to renew prescriptions for Depo-Provera for women of Ethiopian origin if for any reason there's concern that they might not understand the ramifications of the treatment. Great, but what about the compensation for the victims? What about the accountability for the perpetrators? Sorry, but the Israeli government's word just doesn't cut it when they already act with complete impunity. The part that really irks me, though, is the utter hypocrisy. Israel is the only country in the world that was paved for a specific group of people that experienced such horrific discrimination and genocide. And for that same group of people to now use Hitler's methods against another minority to maintain a Jewish majority is insane. I guess it's true. when they say history repeats itself.